teachers of Reddit. What are your the parent is just as bad as the student's stories? Elementary teacher here. We had a student who wouldn't stop stealing things out of other kids' backpacks. We had caught him on camera and would call the parents and they would just say no. That's his insert stolen item. We just bought it for him. Then, we get him on a positive behavior plan and create intentional lessons about empathy to others, setting goals to get what you want, the difference between wants/needs, etc. Eventually, he gets enough positive days in a row that he gets released from the behavior plan and receives a free bike as his incentive for good behavior. They were donated to the school by a local bike shop. The next day he tells me his uncle stole it and pawned it. He went right back to his old behaviors, and it was heartbreaking. I had a student last year who was new to the school. Really nice, friendly, shy and hilariously absent-minded. He would come to school at least 2 days a week with either his shirt on backwards, inside out, or both. So I wanted to talk to his parents about how his absent-mindedness was affecting his learning. Mom shows up at 5. Dad shows up 1 hour late. We have a good chat and they get up to go. As I'm walking them out, I said, I will show you the shortest way to the parking lot. The dad replies with, I didn't park in the parking lot. So I said, you can go the same way to the street. He said, I couldn't find the parking entrance. So I just drove around and parked on asphalt play area. Sure enough, I walk by and his car is next to the playground. So it all came together after that. I had a preschooler call his mother an asshole. This would be upsetting, except the day before, she called him an asshole. She said it quiet enough that other children or people wouldn't hear, but my co-worker swore she heard her say it. We have our scheduled conference and she doesn't understand why he says such nasty things to her. She doesn't understand why he says such nasty things to her. She pretends not to if she mutters the same type of shoot to him under her breath. It's fairly obvious that the child is learning stuff from you when you see them learning stuff from you. Teaching adjacent. I used to be an educational facilitator at a science center. During the school year I would be the liaison for school trips. During the summer, I would run the summer camps. Parents used to like to plunk their kids in science camp because it is educational. We had a pile of hands-on programming. I have to say, it was pretty fun. Fun unless your kid aggressively hates science and you are forcing them to be there. Enter Jason. Jason was a shoot on day 1. We welcomed them to camp by making liquid nitrogen ice cream. Jason didn't give a shoot. He refused to eat stupid nerd ice cream. Through the day his attitude got worse. He refused to participate, called the other kids nerds and losers. He was an all-around pain in the ass. At pickup, I pulled his mother aside and said, I don't think Jason really wants to be here. We can arrange for a refund or see if we can transfer him to another program he will find more to his liking. His mother replied, it's your job to make him want to be here. Clearly you suck at it. Great. Day 2. Jason shows up with an even bigger chip on his shoulder. The day's activity was engineering. Fort building. Every kid loves a good fort. Except Jason. Jason picked up one of the plastic tubes and cracked a kid across the back of the leg with it. As I run over to tend to his victim, Jason cracks me across the side of the head with the tube with all his might, breaking my glasses and giving me a decent bruise across the side of the face. It takes 2 of us to disarm Jason and separate him from the group. We pull him into the admin office and call his parents to come now. He is no longer welcome. His mother shows up a good 3 hours later, absolutely livid. Not about Jason's behavior. Not in the least. There was no apology or understanding. Instead, as we ejected her son from camp, she turned to us and said, I hope you all get cancer. Edit. Have a few people saying, we should have pressed charges. This camp was for 6 to 8 year old. Jason was a fairly young child at the time. I once had a student who thought I should drop whatever I was doing and help him immediately anytime he asked a question. One time, I was working with another student and this kid yells across the room that he needed help. I told him I would help him when I was done and to please raise his hand next time. Apparently, this set the kid off because he went on a loud tirade about how I was racist for not helping him. Never mind the fact that the student I was helping, who he wanted me to abandon, was the same color as him. I ended up kicking him out of class after he went on and on about it for a while, which he said only confirmed my racism. Everyone else in the room just kind of stared at him as he left. He got suspended from my class for a couple days, which meant I needed to inform his family. I never actually spoke to his mother because his aunt was listed as a contact about any incidents. Turns out he and his mother were living with the aunt at the time, but the aunt explained to me that he had learned this behavior from his mother, who demonstrated this behavior anytime she felt she was wronged. The aunt said she was trying to fix her nephew's attitude and promised me that it didn't matter if her sister thought it was fine to teach her son to act that way because it wasn't going to happen again while they lived in her house. And you know, she was successful. The kid never pulled that crap again. At least not in my classroom. This one's sad. I was a camp counselor and I had a girl in my cabin with issues. She was attention seeking, kind of a mean girl, and generally wasn't liked by a lot of the camp. I honestly didn't give her a lot of one-on-one attention, which is something I deeply regret in retrospect. I only understood the issue because I was bus staff. This was a sleepover camp. Her session was 2 weeks and her parents had elected for her to take the bus back and feed pick her up. The bus was early, but plenty of parents showed up early. They were so excited to see their kids. As we got closer to pickup time, the crowd dwindled until there were just a few left. A staff member asked for the kids still there so they could make phone calls. All but one were in traffic and on their way. My campus parents said no. They said they had 2 more days of freedom. They wouldn't take her and said we needed to put up with her for a couple more days. They each said this individually and hung up. Neither responded to follow-up calls. Staff told me to go home, and they were left to figure that one out. My parents always hated me, but this was shocking to me. That someone's parents would absolutely refuse to let their 12-year-old into their house. High school teacher, and we have something called soft lockdowns known as shelter in place by some schools, where doors are shut and locked, but classes continue as normal. These are pretty common and can be used for anything from a medical emergency, want everyone out of the hallway if someone needs to be cared for, because high schoolers are nosy to a fugitive running around the neighborhood. We've been in many soft lockdowns because parents have come to the school ready to hunt down and beat the crap out of a teacher. They usually come in the front office, can't access the rest of the school without someone opening the secure door, screaming, cussing, threatening everyone in the area. You get the picture. Often, they're removed by the SRO and given a criminal trespass citation. We have a pretty high rate of fights and violence between students. When I see parents acting this way, it all makes sense. A bit different because this is a positive story. I'm not a teacher, but I TA'd for a freshman chemistry class last year, so college kids, but ones that were in high school like 3 or 4 months previously. One kid in my section was amazing. Scary smart, always got great marks on assignments, asked fantastically phrased questions that the professor loved to answer, was a joy to be around during the lab section. Because he was so easy to be friendly with, he clearly loved and excelled at the work, and enjoyed being in the environment, which definitely extended to the rest of his lab group. They were consistently the most talkative, but also got the highest marks on assignments. About halfway through the semester we introduce a concept that he struggled with a bit, so he came to a few tutoring sessions, and he was a joy to help one-on-one. Our third tutoring session was in the campus Starbucks, and went late, so he had to get his dad to pick him up, because his ride to campus that day had already left. His dad came a bit early, so he ordered a drink and sat down with us for a bit, and I immediately understood where this kid got everything from. His dad was wicked smart, asked relevant questions in a way that made me think about the material in serious depth, same way that his son did. Cracked a couple of dad jokes that made me laugh, and was beyond easy to talk to the point where we had stayed an extra 30 minutes beyond what we were supposed to, swapping between going over the material and cutting up. Just a joy to be around from day one until the day of the final, and the apple clearly didn't fall far from the tree. I had a student many years ago, call him M. He was a sweetheart in the classroom, never answered back, did as he was told, engaged and interesting. But, outside of class, he wasn't allowed to be around other students, escorted class to class, because he would start a fight every time, and I mean that. I could not wrap my head around it until parents' evening. His dad was a hulk of a man. Mother was sadly deceased. He was clearly abusive. He kept his hand on the back of M's neck, leading him around like that. M looked like he was going to his own execution. Was told later that authorities were involved, but M lashes out all the time because it was the only time he felt he had some control. Would never talk back to an adult because he was just shoot scared of us all. He didn't make it the year before he disappeared, but I still think about him. The mother who was screaming in the office, "I'm gonna hit you in your freaking face," because a tutor dared to say the kid was having behavior issues during free tutoring. Now I know why the 5 of your 11 kids in our school are terrible hot messes. Poor things don't have much of a change. Mom was banned from the building because this was the last straw. I got a phone call from a parent basically saying that a few other children had beaten up their child, so the following day we take aside that child, then all the other children in the end. Turns out there were 9 other children involved, and it turns out to be the complete truth. The children had been arguing about a video game for 10 and this one child had a different opinion to the others, so they push him to the ground, and while he's curled up on the floor, they start kicking him. My head teacher contacts the parents of the children involved to let them know and explain the punishment. Fast forward to the next day when one of the parents comes into school and starts shouting at their child in front of his whole class and teacher, asking him why the hell he admitted to doing it, what was the matter with him, and how he was stupid for doing so, before taking him and his 2 siblings out of the school. This child was one of the ones who admitted straight away to doing it and had burst straight into tears and was clearly feeling guilty. I had a student who repeatedly lied about assignments, saying he turned them in and his teachers had lost them. As a team with admin present, we conferenced with mom and dad, who deflected and provided excuses that he just doesn't like school, and if my son says he did something, he did it. We value integrity in our family. 3 months later, some friends of mine invited me to a bar a few towns away to see a band perform. Near the end of the night, I ran into the mom who is out on a date with a man who isn't her husband. From that point on, she wouldn't return any of my emails or calls about the son's behavior. She is now an administrator in another county. Early in my career, I was the poor sap that got roped into doing home visits to work with parents that couldn't meet in school. 6th grade child with extreme behavioral disturbances would make moaning sounds in class to upset other students. Told one of my colleagues he'd slap the black out of her. I pull up to the apartment complex and start looking for the right unit. I'm sudden distracted by very obscene, very loud moaning above me. Child's mother and not the father were very naked, having sex out on their deck, standing to the open rest of the apartment complex. Dad was listed to live at that same address. I decide I want absolutely nothing to do with this situation. And as I'm putting in reverse, a utility truck flies in behind me and parks across 2 spaces. Guy gets out and yells up at the woman, "Bitch, I told you we'd beat the N at $an area carrot if you didn't stop frickin'." Starts throwing screwdrivers and wrenches up at them. I noped out of there so freaking fast. Afterwards, I had much more empathy for the kid. He grew up in an atmosphere so unbelievably fricked I had never conceived it could actually exist. Obligatory, not a teacher, but I worked as a camp counselor. We had an 8-year-old who managed to shoot his pants about 4 times in 2 months. We'd tell the mother, who just waved it off, saying that he was just too lazy to go to the bathroom and that he always did that. Regular 8-year-olds do not routinely shoot their pants, but okay car. A student got into a fight. That student called her mom, and the mom showed up with younger siblings. The mom got physical with administration. One of the younger siblings was talking shoot as that happened. Edit. Typo edit 2. I believe the mom had a toddler on her hip as she walked in the building, and she aimed to set that kid down before she got stupid. I only heard the sounds of this melee from my classroom. I unfortunately or fortunately didn't get to watch this elegant drama unfold. My information is secondhand. Also, the funniest thing I've seen is one girl take another girl's pizza and then slap her in the face with it. That was of course a middle school. My first story took place in a high school. I teach elementary music, but I also assist in before school care. There was one boy 3rd grade who was sitting at a table with several other students. One girl was attempting to engage with the boy and he abruptly stands up, points at the girl, and screams, "You are the devil." Obviously at this age there needs to be intervention, because you can't talk to other in that fashion, or with that language. We always try and talk through emotions rather than explode. Call the mom, and explain the situation. The mom's first and only response is, well, if he called her the devil, she probably is a devil. Pretty clearly can tell where that behavior comes from. Not a teacher but a parent. My son asked if a friend could come over for a sleepover. No big deal. The name he gave was a friend of his I liked, and a good kid. Come the night, it's a different kid with the same name. Kid's mom, whom I had never met, just says, "Are we doing this, or what?" But frick it, I had already committed, and the kids seemed thrilled about it. This was back when the Pokemon card game was huge with the school kids, and they stayed up late playing and having a blast. Although the other kid was a poor loser and argued a lot. In the morning the mom picks the kid up and pretty much acted like it was a huge imposition for her to have to pick him up at all. Later that day, my son is going his binder of Pokemon cards and finds his shiny Charizard is missing. Which, if you know the game, was pretty rare and the pride of his collection. I called the mom and asked if, by chance, it had gotten mixed up with her son's cards. She flipped out, cursed like a sailor, and threatened to call the cops on me for falsely accusing her son. TL. Dr. Kid steals my son's shiny Charizard card and his mom threatens to call the cops on me. Not me, but a friend of mine is a professor at a Christian college. They had a student who wanted to do a topic about how being gay is a sinful choice, and the only source they listed was their dad. When the teacher said that their assignment needs to be something that has academic backing, the student responded by claiming that their dad is an expert on the choice of gayness. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in high school my form tutor was ranting about one child's mum. It was the final year and exams were approaching. This one lad would come to school, but sleep the entire day and never do any work, like literally none, and would often fall asleep. He was asked why he was so tired, and obviously the kid just replied, "Dunno." After some digging they found out his routine was home from school, 2h nap, play Call of Duty all through the night, and then have a bath before coming to school. His mum was called in and told what was going on, and that her son was going to fail everything. Her response? "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" in a tone that suggested, "Well, you're the teacher, so it's not my problem." Poor lad slept through the handful of exams he turned up to. I was a French teacher. Kid was in level 1 French. Clearly he put his assignment through a translator. I confronted him. He admitted it, so I gave him a 0F. His family lost their minds. They claimed I was calling him stupid. Long story short, principal let him redo the assignment. Definitely not a teacher, but this is relevant, I swear. After I graduated high school I heard that one of the best teacher I ever had ended up quitting. He was absolutely fantastic and just a very genuine human being. Everyone loved him, even if they hated the class. Well, the class behind me absolutely broke him. I remember being a senior and watching the man become a hollow shell. At the end of that year, he ended up failing a girl because she never did her work, never tried, just kind of fricked off even with extensions and help, and constantly gave him shoot. When the mom came to talk to him, she went off, accused him being prejudiced, doing it because he just didn't like her daughter, blah, blah, blah. She ends up suing both him and the school and he quits. I had a high school student with very high anxiety. She was high performing academically and in music and sport. She came late to class, so I gave her a late slip. These are basically meaningless and the student writes their reason for being late. As teacher, I would apply all rules uniformly. So, I gave her the late slip. She burst into tears and left my class. Her mum turns up, starts yelling at me about how unfair it is that I don't cut her a break because she is doing a full course load, music, dance, sport, and so forth. She's stressed because she's overextended. She's a wonderful kid, and she's just being asked to write down why she's late. This poor kid, her mother put so much pressure on her to have top grades, she ended up just losing it over a late slip. Being yelled at is quite confronting. The parent stood over me and just screamed. My heart was racing. It was a bit terrifying really. I like this kid. She was top in my classes too. Just to make it clear, I wasn't hard on her for being late. Just asked her to do the same as I would any other kid. Not a teacher, but a lad I knew in school was a drug dealer. His mother worked in the police force, so if she ever caught him, she'd be obliged to report it as she could lose her job if she didn't. Cut to a parents' evening in year 11, 15 over 16 years old, and he sits down with a teacher, sat to our side to have his meeting, while I'm having mine. After a small, while I phase out, and I chime in on hearing the teacher say he's not doing well, and failing his classes. This is towards the end, so as they end the meeting the mother shouts, "I wish you weren't my son. You're the biggest failure. I hate you. You were the biggest mistake I have ever made." Now, not to judge home life, he was a little shoot, but he was not a nasty guy. I just don't know how a mother could talk to their son like that, especially in front of his peers and other adults. Middle school teacher. Students had attended a trampoline park as a field trip to award good attendance. While there, one student had stolen a rubber bracelet. Not a big deal, but still stole it, nonetheless, so the principal contacted the father. The father called back and left a voicemail basically accusing the principal and the rest of the staff of thievery, as well saying, "How many pens do you walk out of that school with? How many pens purchases by the school do you walk out with every day? My tax money." Anyone who is a teacher sees how funny this is because, of course, we are providing our own pens. Not a teacher, but am a parent. The story I always think of when I see a question like this is when I had a routine pre-report card conference with my son's first grade teacher. She was telling me about how he didn't take some of his schoolwork seriously and sometimes didn't finish it. As an example, she took out a handwritten book that he had written about penguins as an assignment. It started out nice, with legit penguin facts, and then after the first 10 pages, it became a bit silly, and then ended abruptly with, "A penguin has never seen a leprechaun." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. I was doubled over, gasping for air, crying from laughing so hard. The teacher obviously didn't think it was funny and seemed surprised that I was cracking up, but she politely conceded that maybe it was a little funny. I'm 100% sure that she thought to herself, "Ugh, that's where he gets it." If you mean crazy, I got this. Let's call this student Amy. Kinda quiet, kind of quirky. Enter. Mom one hit a teacher with her car. The youngest daughter darted out in front of the car to get in the other side against protocol. Supervising teacher literally jumps into action and put a hand out yelling, "Stop." Car hits hand. Driver drives away. Hospital visit required and police called. Two parent signs up to read to the class. She chooses a book called That's Disgusting. Pretty run-of-the-mill call and answer stuff. Pick your nose? That's disgusting. Forget to wash your hands. That's disgusting. Until she got to put your finger in the cat's behind. That's pardon? That's not a thing. Please stop introducing the idea to these 8-year-olds that putting your finger in a cat's behind is a thing. 3 Amy's mom wants to check in on Amy, so she peeks through the hallway window during class. A student raises his hand. Amy's mom is staring at us. I turn to look. Mom ducks. I walk to the hallway door and open it. Mom remains ducked. We have a 2-minute conversation with my ducked on the ground of when it is appropriate for parents to be on campus.